Are you looking for a new way to get and stay healthy? Well, I put together a roadmap just for you, designed to help you feel good and stay sane through the integration of yoga, meditation, digestive health, whole food nutrition, and herbal medicine. It's also an overview of some of the progressive, multidimensional approaches that I've come to use with my one-on-one clients to help them connect to the body's innate wisdom in order to heal from chronic pain, exhaustion, and even trauma. So I can't wait for you to read this. So go to alyssafinnick.com now to get your hands on this 16-page guide today, or check out the show notes for the link. Welcome to the Wild Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Finnick, and this is your space to learn more about the importance of slowing down, taking care of yourself, and the mind-body connection. And most importantly, how to reclaim your health by listening to your body's innate wisdom and reconnecting with the earth. Well, hello everyone. I'm so excited for my guest today and to share this conversation with you. We had a blast and we were totally in tune and talk about some of my favorite things. My guest is Jennifer Lewis. She is a shamanic energy healer, a holistic weight loss coach, and she also hosts her own podcast, which we'll link to in the show notes, the Empath Woman Awaken podcast. So she works to teach you how to step out of your self-limiting beliefs and embody the magic and power within you to create a life of health, happiness, and vitality on every level of being. So that's what we dive into. So not just the physical realm, we talk about the energetic realm, and we talk about really slicing through, what's holding you back. We use some examples personally, so you'll learn a little bit about me. And then, because we all have stuff, even as we work through personal development, like there are layers upon layers, and shamanic energy healing and those practices, which are deeply connected to spirit and nature, can really, really get to the root. And sometimes that's not something we can access, and we need guidance for, or just facilitation. And so I love our conversation today and where it goes, and I'm so excited for you to listen in. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the Wild Wisdom Podcast. I'm excited to have my guest, Jen Lewis, here today. How are you, Jen?
Hello, Miss Eliza. I am good. Thank you.
Good. So Jen and I connected because of horses and energetic healing and yoga and all these things that we love. And so where are you located, Jen? I always forget.
I am in Southern California.
Okay, that's right. That's right. And I know you have a horse ranch, don't you?
I do. Yes, we have. Actually, I had an animal sanctuary, but we stopped taking in the animals, and now I just get to enjoy and spend the majority of my time with the horses. Yes.
Oh, I love that. That's like my dream one day. So I'll have to put an action plan together of getting there. So,
yep.
So I'm glad you're on the show and we're talking, and I really love to start out with giving our listeners some insight to your story, your journey of how, because we all got here into understanding more of connection, spirituality, mind-body connection, that sort of stuff for a reason. And so, and in different ways. And I find that people relate to that, and they just like hearing your story, because there's some people think you just are this way, and it's like, no, we went on a journey. So certain times we had to learn this stuff, and we were called to this stuff. So would you share your story?
I would love to. So first, I want to say thank you for just having me here and being able to share my story, because a lot of my life was spent, as you say, looking at others and thinking like, why am I different than them? I would compare myself, and I would think like, why do they have that and I don't? And why are they in this space and I'm not? And why do I have to struggle? And I was stuck in these stories that I did not realize was all part of my journey, right? And still being on that journey, learning to enjoy the experience of the journey rather than just looking at what we think is the final product, the destination. So my story starts probably back in 2010. It's been a little bit since I've really looked at the dates, but I was in a really ugly place. I had just had my children. I had 3 within, well, their birthdays are 05, 06, 07.
Oh, wow.
So
So your life was just different.
it was very busy, very, very busy. It was a whirlwind, and I was lost. I was literally lost. Well, I put on a lot of weight, and so then I went and I found a weight loss program. Okay. And I lost 70 pounds. And then I had all of these people, because weight, right? We carry it on the outside. It's so very obvious. So then people want to know, like, what did you do? What did you do? Well, the problem was I got really, really sick. And I mean, I had candida overgrowth. My hair was falling out. I had developed thyroid issues. My gut was a mess, which, obviously is all connected. Suffering severely from depression. And so I thought, I don't want to tell you what I've done, because that is an ugly place I don't want anybody to be. And so that is when I started with the integrative nutrition school and looking into holistic therapies and really trying to figure out, wait a minute, when I was 220 pounds on my little 5'4" frame, I was healthier than I'd ever been. It just, on the outside, I felt like I should look a certain way. And then I go and I do and I lose all this weight, and then I was just absolutely miserable. So what the heck was going on?
Yeah.
So that's what started my journey into this mind, body, spirit, and understanding energy, understanding how it's all connected and how it shows up on our body, that what we feel on the inside shows up outside of us.
Yeah.
And it is there to get our attention.
Definitely. Well, I know I had one lady, she could always read me, and she was like, this was actually before I had a baby, and she was like, that's protection.
Yes.
And like when someone calls it out, you're sometimes you're like, And then what was interesting, related to that, when this was also before I had the baby, but a few months before I got pregnant, I went out with someone who was like a mirror to me. He was from Turkey, actually, and I've been to Turkey, and it was the weirdest thing. Like, we went out a few weekends. It was like a mirror, and so I'm pretty sure he was there for a reason. Well, I know that, but he had said something to me that he's like, it seems like you have like a layer of protection, and I'm like, well, damn it, I didn't think anybody could see that, especially some guy I go out with who's not necessarily trained in seeing that sort of stuff. But then it was really neat, because I was able to tell him, and I said, I thought about that, and and that's true, and I have to work on that. And I said to him, because we were just having this very open conversation, which is really strange, but it was really neat. And I said, well, you need to love yourself more. because of the way he said things and the way his shoulders were forward and stuff. And it was just an interesting conversation, but it was a wake up of like, I didn't think, you think you're hiding it from the world, right? And yeah, and some people can see more than others, but sometimes somebody comes into your life and reminds you, so you need to work on it. So I'm glad that you're talking about this, and I think it's essential. So what are you doing now? Because I know you're working with shamanic energy healing and the weight loss aspect and the energetic sort of stuff. Can you explain how that connection is? I mean, we kind of talked at some examples of, in what's going on inside manifest physically. So, we've got this energetic, that's the yoga therapy model too. You've got this physical, energetic, emotional, mental layer, intellectual, and spiritual. And so talk to me about how the shamanic energy healing, or just the path of the shaman, works in helping someone with all of that.
Right. So from a shamanic perspective, there are two worlds. There's the world that you see, right? The serpent level of existence, which is, okay, I'm overweight, or I have Hashimoto's, right? So I have Hashimoto's, or I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I won't claim that I have Hashimoto's anymore, but I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I can, from this world that we see, could say, oh, it's just because my thyroid isn't working, my gut's not healthy. And I can give you all the reasons, black and white, why that is so. But the shamanic perspective is there is another world that is unseen. It is the spiritual side. So if you think of trauma, it begins out here. So oftentimes as children, we experience trauma in many different forms. And so that's my work as a shaman. We do what's called soul retrieval, is we go back to that period of time and we find the trauma. And during that trauma, what happens is your soul fragments. And you leave a part of yourself in that existence. And yet we spend our life thinking we're whole, but yet we still have this feeling of something missing. Something is awry. And then we have all of these health issues, relationship issues, financial issues, career issues. And we're not taught to look back into, well, why is that so? What happened then that this is happening now? Well, go ahead.
But when you're talking about then, are you talking about earlier in this current life? Are you talking about past lives? Are you talking about generations before?
Yes. Let's just say yes. All of the above. Okay. So a lot of times when a client comes to me, they're open to, okay, yeah, I had a childhood issue. Both mom and dad worked, or mom and dad were divorced, or there was severe sexual trauma, there rape, molested. There's a lot there, right? We can all, as women, stand in our space and say, what was that Me Too movement, right? How many of us have experienced something like that in the form of trauma? Well, we can connect that back many lifetimes, but a lot of times we just need to start as children and bring our souls back. My personal experience, I had all of the above, right? My parents were still married, so that wasn't the issue. But I did have sexual trauma from a very young age. And then, well, how do I protect myself? I keep that weight around me. And I would find that I was doing everything right. Okay, I was eating right. I was exercising. I was doing everything the doctor told me, and it was not budging. And when I lost the weight, I started to feel incredibly vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Like the minute I could see a man looking my way, it was like I would go home or I would stop somewhere and just start eating.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was, I felt like prey, and I didn't want to be seen. When I started getting recognized, I didn't want that attention. I didn't know how to stand in my power
Mm-hmm.
and handle that, because I would respond from the child
Yeah.
that was so vulnerable, that couldn't do anything, wasn't saved, wasn't rescued, wasn't heard when she needed the help. So that is how I felt in those moments. And that's why I carried the white.
Yes, yes. And I was not giggling at you.
Oh no.
I
The
was
dog's
giggling
like,
at
yes.
my dog. So sorry, everybody.
The protective ones. See, but
Yes.
it's all connected, right?
Yes, yes.
There's always connection.
Yes, for sure.
Mhm.
Okay. We've moved into the apartment complex, and so she's not used to that. We lived in a duplex or a house before, so she's like, here's everything. And so sorry, everybody. But yes, I mean, I love that you're sharing all of this, because oftentimes it's, because we're so bombarded with, here's how to lose weight, here's how to do this, and blah, blah, blah. And we don't always, I mean, there's tons of people who do talk about it, but we don't always talk about, in the mainstream, I think, about the emotional connection, the trauma, or, even if it wasn't in this current life, some type of ancestral trauma, that sort of stuff happened to your mother or grandmother. And that's because sometimes what you're carrying isn't yours.
Oh, often.
Mm-hmm.
Often it did not even begin with you. It began 4 generations ago.
Yes.
And what, as a shaman, we refer to as those ancestral curses. They made some kind of a promise then, not understanding the contract of what they were asking for, and it carries generationally.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we continue to carry that. We continue to carry the wounds of what that means. And unless you're able to work with a shamanic practitioner, it's like before I became the shaman that I am, I didn't know. And so I would have clients come to me and they'd be like, okay, tell me what to do, and I'm going to do it. So I'd be like, okay, here's your food list. Don't worry about exercise, because exercise, I mean, that makes you feel good. It purifies your blood. It keeps your body vital. But it's really the nutrition, right? So this was what my belief.
You were trained
and I would,
yeah, and it's important.
Right. And that's what I did that allowed me to release the weight. So I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. Yeah, no. They'd go, and just like me, I'm doing all the things that I thought would work, and it's still not working. And I would feel like a failure. I would feel as a coach, like, what am I not doing for them? But it was the same thing I felt for myself before that, right? Is what am I doing wrong? What's going on? Until I began this journey. And then it was like the real magic began, because we could clear all of that, that it gave us that freedom to stand in our power and show up and use our energy to stop calling in those certain things that we don't want to experience.
I'm curious, like, when did you start bringing in or studying the shamanic healing and way of life? And if you don't mind sharing, like, who did you study with? Have you studied with multiple people, or is there a certain lineage?
So this is a beautiful question. So I would say that my journey as a shaman started in my near-death experience with my son. I didn't know it. I didn't know it then.
Of course.
Because I had put that trauma aside. Well, a few years back, it's very interesting. My husband's grandmother by marriage is a shaman. She
Oh,
has been a shaman for 40 years. She's
oh wow.
incredible. And that is where I began my understanding and learning. And I will tell you up front, I had no idea what I was getting into.
That's usually how it works.
And I tell her, I'm like, if I would have known what was about to happen to me, I don't know, I would have said yes in the middle of it. Somebody once told me, if you're familiar with Reiki, Reiki is like a blow dryer, right? It's very light, refined energy, and it's a beautiful practice. Shamanism is like a snow blower. It moves. It is very powerful, very, very powerful, because you're tuning in with spirits that you don't know that are affecting you. And in that experience, it's like a snow globe moment where you shake, 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 because that heavy energy, that dense energy needs to be broke up. Those past life, those traumas, those shadow pieces, they've got to come to the light before they can be released and healed. Well, that journey can be rather intense. And often, right, you'll hear of people, they go to Peru or they go to the Amazon and they go experience a shaman from these traditional indigenous areas. And they go do ayahuasca or they do the plant medicine. And that's a beautiful thing. Then you come home.
Right?
And your life does not stay the same. And then you're there with no support. That is not a good thing, right?
No, not for that kind of transformation.
No, it's not, because we're dealing with years of trauma, lifetimes of trauma that have been passed on and passed on and passed on. It's very heavy, and to try to handle that on your own is just, there's no need for that. So my tradition is in the Peruvian tradition, I am a Mesioc, Pampa Masayoc shaman. So the Mesa tradition, so we have the medicine wheel, and we work with 4 archetypes. So from a yoga perspective, we know the aura, we know the body, we know we have different levels. Well, there's 4 levels to our being. You have what you see, right? You have the emotional body, you have the spiritual body, but you also have the oversoul. You have the soul that you carry with you for lifetimes. And learning to heal those parts of us, that's what we're here to do. We're here to experience life as a human, but we have these things so that we pay attention, right? Pain is just something to say, hey, look at me, right? When our babies, when they cry, we go to them. We don't let them cry and work it out, but yet that's what we do to ourselves.
I know, right?
It's like, what are we doing? We try to cover it, right? We try to put a Band-Aid on a tack instead of like, let's take that tack out, let's clean it up, let's give it what's necessary, then it will begin to heal. Our spirit is the same way, our soul is the same way, but we forget. We come to this life knowing, but we forget, right? We come in and we forget. The master's job is to remember even into the next life. We've got to learn the lesson to be able to continue that.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that was beautiful. In fact, one of the things I love about hosting a podcast and interviewing people is I and I know, of someone who's in shamanic training. I know a shaman. I've actually never been to one. So as you're talking about this, and this is why I love interviews, because I'm like, I think I probably need to see one. Just because, for me, and we were talking prior to recording, about pregnancy and things coming up. A lot of things come up for me, and I've done a lot of things to deal with that, but it's also made me research and understand. But I know that what is happening with my legs is, every time if I go to energy therapy, which is great, but yes, I like the blow dryer snow blower analogy. That helps it. In fact, my energy therapist and friend Lisa, after pregnancy, I went to her because I was like, fear is coming up. It's an old fear. I know this. It's coming to the surface. It's in my legs, because I can do the nutritional stuff, iron and magnesium, and for the restless legs and stuff. But I was like, something is coming up that's old, and I don't know if it's mine. I'm that in tune that I can tell that kind of stuff for the most part, and there's always more for me to learn. But I booked a session with her, and she cleared my legs, and she said she turned cold and shook whatever was going on. And I still have issues, and it's energy healing will help it for a while. And I'm doing some pelvic floor work, which my last guest, who was pelvic floor physical therapist, and more than that, but she talked about opening Pandora's box.
Oh, yes.
And I was like, what a great phrase and analogy about that, because it wasn't specifically about me, but in general, because she was working with women's health for a long time, and there's a lot going on in the pelvic bowl. But as we're talking, and me thinking about, because my body's very different post-pregnancy, and I'm like, I'm still pretty strong though, because I'll wear my baby and stuff and lift things, but I was like, what's going on with my legs? And trying to get in tune with it, but I think I, might need that shamanic help. So maybe we'll chat afterwards. But
we will, but I would love to ask you something, because
sure.
I think that it will be super helpful for your listeners, because things are always connected.
Yeah, of course.
And I need to go here first, and then I'm going to go into that space with you, is that often we have two ways of being: fight or flight, right?
Right.
And the flight person's going to run away from it. Well, I've never been that person. I've been, let me face you head on, right? I was always, don't tell me what to do. I am not going to do that. So it's a perfect fit for me, what I do now. But what ends up happening is, if we continue to run away, it shows up in our body to get our attention. And what I see in you is somebody who does face things head on. And let's deal with this. I don't want it running me. I don't want to give away my power to something I can't see.
Yeah.
And yet we all do it, right? We're all in that space. And that's why the shamanic work is so vital and so important. And that's why we're seeing more of it. But I will say, a certification, an understanding doesn't make a shaman. It's their work with the spirits. The spirits are the ones that guide you. And you can study something in the book, but it is not going to give you the experience. And the beautiful thing is, we used to think like it was only one way that we could do this. It had to be done in person. But as you know, energy has no bounds. So it can be done Zoom, right? Digital, virtual, because so much of what we do is, it's all energy.
Yes. Yeah.
So putting that out there, right? And then with you, something I would sit with. Okay, so what happens when we give birth.
You're like broken open and connected completely to the spiritual world.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And there are some, there's serious pain in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where sometimes we have to leave our bodies or get some medication or something along those lines to deal with it. But the greatest pain brings this most beautiful blessing. But something else happens. We give birth to a new us. So if we've been somebody who was comfortable in the old, we had our stuff together, we were an independent woman, taking care of herself with freedom to go and do, something I would consider is, where do you feel like maybe your legs have been paralyzed, stopped, right? Looking at what does it mean to you? And looking at what is your new way of being, what are you stepping into, and embody her while you let go of and release the old.
Yeah, I love that, Jen. Because that's actually very, very indicative of what I'm trying to do. And maybe it's that feeling of stuckness sometimes that I get. It's reflective in my legs. And
that's exactly what does our legs do?
Yep, they move us forward. So, and I was sharing with you that whole wild mama wisdom that I've been preparing because I want to share things like this, not just my experience, but all of these layers, what happens in utero, what happens during birth, what happens, not to us as mothers, but also to our children, and thinking about all of that and being aware and mindful of that. And that actually, not just that concept that I'm moving forward with, but also I know for the last 5 years, so, I've sold my business, my brick and mortar business, and in some ways that made me feel stuck. And of course, so does motherhood in some ways too. But I want to break that barrier of, well, if you're a mother, you have to like do this and that. And, routine is important. But it's like, I want to travel again. I miss traveling. So I'm preparing for that shift. And, I just moved, downsized, and to an area, and it really raised my vibration. I can just feel it. I can see it as I walk, talk to people, that sort of stuff. Some of it I also think was the area I moved from, being downtown in the city. I mean, I'm still in the city, but just shifting a little bit, that was really helpful. So it's sort of, I'm glad you shared that. And I don't mind sharing my stuff on the podcast because I want women to know, like, this stuff happens, and then you can use me as an example. And but it's very indicative of what's kind of happening in my life, and I have to think about that. I was trying to tune into my legs as my daughter woke me up at 4 a.m. this morning, and I was like, well, while I try to go back to sleep, and I'm just going to lay here and tune in. And I just wasn't getting anything, but maybe just thinking of it in that different perspective will be helpful for sure. Yeah, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, and as a shaman, often and as a shaman, that's what we do. We journey to your underworld and find what is there, and you're not doing it alone. You're doing it with somebody who holds that space, because often it can be scary for some people. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
But it can be, because you don't know what you're going to find. And when you do, what do you do with it? And I want to say this, is that what you're bringing is so powerful and so important in what we think as mothers, what we can't do anymore, or what we have to do, or what we should do. those words need to be removed from our vocabulary, because I stand in this space right now as I homeschool my children. I have 3. They're in 10th, 9th, and 7th grade. I take care of my grandbaby, and I run an international business. I run a podcast. I do coaching. And I just spent 3 days in the mountains, 3 days on the beach. Like, we have this idea that all of a sudden we're going to be so confined. And what drives me to do what I do is to show my children what is possible. When we show up in our highest vibration, like you said, as empaths, as healers, as light workers, we feel everything. Okay, everything. That's right. My podcast, the Empath Woman Awaken, right? Well, I don't want to feel this. So we protect, we cover, we overwork, we do all this stuff. Like you spoke of, in your old space, that energy sits there. And right now with COVID, what are we feeling? There is so much fear of death, fear of sickness, illness, all of this fear that is like this big, heavy feeling that we as empaths learn how to create the vibration around us, that we don't feel that anymore. We know how to heal, we know how to help, but we don't have to carry it in ourselves in order to help someone else.
Right. I think that's important because
it is.
Because, like, for example, with all the COVID and lockdowns and masks and all that stuff, like, I've, even though there are, of course, things I always still need to work on, like, the moving forward.
We all do,
yes. Right? We're human.
Yes.
So, but that, that I could recognize when I was feeling that and like, be like, no, that's not mine. But it's interesting when people don't recognize that, and it's good to start being aware, because many people are empathic and carry that. But what I loved with you saying, like, you're teaching raising your children differently, and I always have to remember, so am I. I mean, my daughter is getting raised completely differently, and my niece joked about, like, she probably eats healthier than most babies. and so it's like, and so I'm like, well, and then I make sure she's learning, and we're co-sleeping, even though my dad's all like, why won't she sleep in the crib? Put the mattress by the bed and let her sleep on the mat. I'm like, what's wrong with being in the crib? But that's all he knows. And it was just sort of funny. I'm like, like, it's different. And she's just, even that first year, she's been raised differently. And, I don't know what I'll do with school, but homeschool is on my radar. So I may pick your brain about that one day, because I want her to be raised differently. I want her to have her feet in the grass. Like, she's been around horses already since she was a baby. I'd either carry her or, we stayed on a farm in Michigan for a vacation, and she got to see all the sheep rushing up to get fed, and we have pictures of her with the horses, and we put her on a little miniature horse, and she was not happy, but it's scary. That's all new stuff. Little waves were like, whoa, powerful.
Well,
so when we went to the lake, and but it's just like, wow, very different. And currently I am in this space of a little bit of coming home and making a home and that sort of stuff, because I moved back from downtown. I won't go into where I thought I would move at the beginning of this year, but now I'm on the west side of town, close to where I grew up. So it's very interesting going through, like, the streets, and it's like these things that, I remember, like, I lost my virginity across this, in the neighborhood across the street. Like, and it's like to my first boyfriend who I loved when I was 17. But but it was just like,
Oh,
but it's like my first love, and I'm like, that's so funny to like be back and all of this. And there's something, it's coming together for a reason.
yes.
And so that's why I'm like, we'll just travel. We'll just get our traveling and start doing that again, and interview mamas all around the world.
That freedom. And what a beautiful offering. I mean, everything about you and the offering that you're bringing. I will share, when we had our interview before, you are a completely different, not completely different, but you are a different person.
The same space. I
No.
remember doing that interview, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not feeling it today. So, and so.
Yeah, you,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is a presence about you. There is an energy about you that you have raised your vibration. And that is the beauty when we show up in our power as mothers, and we say, you know what, this is what we're going to do. No matter what anybody else says, no matter what I've been raised to believe, no matter what the box that has been created, we don't have to fit in that. And we don't have to raise our children in that.
Yes.
And when we teach our kids to stand in their own power and understanding, it looks different for everybody, right? Yeah. I love the equine for this reason. And I will say this, that remind me of the equine and this energy, is that, first of all, equines, when I was a teen, literally saved my life. I felt like they were the only ones that got me, because they are the energy readers. That is what they do.
That is exactly what they do. Yeah.
So what do I love about them? They're this amazing, magnificent, strong, journeying animal with such beauty and refined grace. And they are the most gentle beings when they've been handled properly.
Yes. Yeah.
And I will say this. I have Sephora now is her name. We call her Sophie. She's a rescue.
Love it.
Her tongue was almost completely severed all the way through. I didn't know until a few months ago. And I want to be like her. And because she is the most gentle, kind, she doesn't hold any hate towards humans. And I see myself in her, in my own traumas, how angry I was for a lot of years.
Sure.
And showing up now in that grace, in that beauty, in that compassion, it changes us. And I think as mothers, we learn that, and I see with you, it's like, I see this power, I see this grace, I see like this presence about you, that thank God you're a mother. Thank God you're passing that on, right? Thank you for showing up and choosing that, and then thank you for your daughter choosing you for her mother.
Yes,
right?
I am grateful every day.
Yes.
Every day for her choosing me. Totally make me cry.
Right?
It will. It totally. I was staring into her eyes, singing her to sleep this morning, and I just would want to cry. I'm like, I can't look too deeply into your eyes, or I will just hit that emotional deep into my heart and soul. And but I'm glad you see that, because horses show up in my dreams all the time. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how my life, how horses can be more of a permanent part of my life, because they need to be. Still figuring that out. That will come.
Yes. Well, they still are, and that's what matters. However that is, right? Often we think it should be this or that, but it's really about right now. This is where you're meant to be. This is part of your journey, and embracing and embodying and honoring that in yourself, and it's there. It is there. It's already there. It's so enjoy now.
Yeah.
And I mean, you are such a beautiful soul. You really are. And thank you for bringing that offering to other mommies, because it is so, so needed. And
Thank you.
we need to heal ourselves. We don't pass this on.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Was there anything else you'd like to share? Any final thoughts before we close out?
Let me think. Well, I would just what's coming to me is us as women standing in our power, standing in who we are, right? Going back to the equines. The halflinger doesn't look at the Arabian and go, I wish I was an Arabian, right? And the raven doesn't go, I wish I was a draft. And
right.
no, they stand in their own power. And they are really good at what they are here to do. And the more we can do that as women, the more we pass that on to our daughters. We heal our sons, and it moves forward in a huge, huge vibrational shift. And it's needed now more than ever. Us as women owning that power and standing in it without shame, without fear.
Yes. And I think that's definitely that vibrational shift and how we change the world.
Yes.
Through changing ourselves or knowing ourselves, really. It's not even about changing, but truly knowing ourselves and releasing all of those layers. So I appreciate all of your time, Jen, and all of your wisdom, and for coming on the show.
Thank you.
So, I want to hear from you. What did you think of today's topic? Direct message me on Instagram or Facebook, or better yet, join the Wild Wisdom Collective, my free Facebook group, and chime in on the discussion. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and insight. And if you love what you're hearing, please take a moment to click the button on your smartphone to subscribe. Or, better yet, write a review and tell me why you love tuning in. And maybe you'll be featured in our listener spotlight on a future episode. I cannot wait to see you again, same time, same place next week. Wild blessings.